Hello. Yeah, I hope all of you can hear me now. Yeah, good evening, all of you. Welcome to a session on economics. And this session focuses on paper 3 of CSEET. And you all know that CSEET has replaced CS Foundation. And this exam is a professional course exam, and it is made really interesting and, of course, challenging. The question that comes to our mind is, should we really get worried about this exam? Absolutely not. You need not really worry about this exam. There are certain small things which you should keep in mind while preparing for this examination. That's all. First one is the approach should be towards understanding the concepts really well so that you have command over the subject. That's the first thing to be done. Second thing is consistent efforts in the right direction is very important whenever we are taking up this kind of an examination. And it all depends on the efforts that you put. And if you can solve more and more number of MCQs, if you attend all the lectures that are available to you, and if you make sure that you put your best foot forward and start working towards this examination, clearing CSEET should not be difficult. Anyway, so what we will do is in this session, we will take up one concept from paper 3, that is economics. We'll also see the syllabus that we have and the different topics that are covered in the syllabus. And we will take one concept. We will have a deep dive into that concept and try to understand the concept from various angles and dimensions. And we will also try to solve 4 or 5 MCQs very quickly at the end of the session, so that you will have an understanding how to approach a particular topic, how to understand the concept, and how to take up the MCQs and solve them. So these are some of the things that are lined up for us. I will very quickly share the screen with you all, and you can start looking at the screen and we will start the discussion. Hope all of you are ready and we will start. Just give me a minute. I will share the screen. Hello. I think there seems to be a small technical error, and I'm not able to share the screen. That shouldn't be a problem. Anyway, we will have a discussion on the topic, and we will continue with the things that are planned for us. Now, if you look at the syllabus of paper 3, there are mainly two parts in the syllabus. The first part of it deals with the economics, and the second part focuses on business environment. Now, if you look at economics, we majorly focus on microeconomics in the first chapter, and we study topics such as demand, supply, and markets. Now, under markets, we shed light on the perfect competition market as well as the imperfect competition market. Now, in the second chapter, we have the national income accounting, where we study some of the most important topics such as GDP, GNP, NDP, NNP, and all other things. Okay, so okay, I'm told that the screen sharing is active now. Just a minute. Uh, Hello, hope all of you are there. We are sorry, there is some technical glitch and not able to share the screen. That's fine. That should not be a problem. I should be able to explain and discuss the topic with you all, even without the screen sharing. You can listen to me carefully, and we will be able to understand the topic. And it's a very simple topic that I'm discussing with you all. So that shouldn't be a problem at all. Anyway, so we will continue from where we had stopped. I was telling you all about the uh, the syllabus that we have in paper 3. Paper 3 has two parts, like I told you. The first part is economics, and the second part is business environment. Now, if you look at the first part, that is economics, we start with microeconomics. And in microeconomics, we have three important topics that we discuss. First is demand, second is supply, and the third part is market. And market, like all of us know, is based on competition. And it is broadly divided into two categories: perfect competition market and the imperfect competition market. So that is the first chapter for us. Then we move on to the macroeconomics. And in macroeconomics, we start with the national income accounting. So in national income accounting, we have GDP, GNP, NDP, NNP, and we also have a lot of things that are covered, like personal income and other things. Okay, so we discuss all those things, and that makes it very interesting. From there, we move on to the union budget. So union budget is another very important chapter that we study. And what we see here is we first start with the uh, terminologies that are used in the union budget. So in union budget, we study the terminologies, and from there we go to the capital revenue budget and expenditure budget. All these things are covered in the third chapter. From there, we move to the next part, which is very, very nice. And there we talk about the different sectors that are there in the country. We study about agriculture sector, manufacturing sector, and services sector. Something which is very relevant for us, which we keep reading in the newspapers on a day-to-day basis. And it makes a lot of sense for us to know the way in which all these sectors are performing. And we also have chapters on entrepreneurship, which is very nice. And here we come to know about the different challenges and importance of entrepreneurship in the country. Then we study the core of business environment. We study the internal business environment and the external business environment. And we also study the various components that come under the internal and the external environment. So this is also something which all of us should know, because we are all aspiring company secretaries. So we will be dealing with companies, and we should understand how exactly a company is influenced by a lot of other forces, which are collectively called the stakeholders. So we study this part as well in the chapter in the syllabus that is given to us. And at the end of the syllabus, we go to the important institutions which all of us should know. It includes institutions such as the Niti Aayog. Like you are aware, Niti Aayog stands for National Institute for Transforming India, and it has replaced the Planning Commission. Planning Commission was set up way back in 1950, and Planning Commission has been instrumental in getting the 11 or 12 5-year plans for the country. But the changing times, the way in which the economy is performing, the world economy is responding, all these things have changed. So we would need a lot of other important things. So it has been replaced by Niti Aayog. So Niti Aayog is studied in the important organizations or institutions of the country. We also study about RBI. It is more or less the repetition of what you studied in your lower classes. Then we have something about SEBI. Then we also study about NCLT and NCLAT. So these are some of the important institutions that we study in the syllabus that is there for us in the paper 3. Now, what are the things that we should focus on? There is the total marks that is set aside for paper 3 is 50 marks. So you can expect 25 marks worth questions from economics and 25 marks worth from questions from business environment. So there is no option for us. Generally, we do this, which are the important chapters and what I should concentrate and what is it that I can consider for choice. So such questions are generally asked by you all. So what we have to do is we need not worry about any of those things. So it becomes important for you all to make sure that you focus on all the topics that are there and study really well. Okay, now we shall move on to the next part where we will take up a concept and we will discuss. Give me 10 seconds time. I'll come back to you all with the first topic and we will have the discussion. Okay, the concept that we have taken up for discussion today is demand, definition of demand, and the law of demand. So how do we go about this? Now, first we should understand why do we even study economics, and what is the role that demand plays in economics. See, everything that we do, everything that is happening around us is purely because of the demand that it can generate. It's as simple as that. So even before we get into the demand, we need to understand why is demand so very important, and how is it relevant to the times that we are living in, and what is economics all about, and how do we define economics, and how demand becomes a part of economics. Anyway, so economics is a social science. So you will never find a laboratory for economics anywhere, because economics is something which is found in the society, and all of us are a part of the society. And you and I, knowingly, unknowingly, are practitioners of economics, and economics is a part of our lives. So here, what we have to understand is what exactly is economics. When we were in school, we were given this very simple definition of economics. We were told that economics is economics is all about household management. So how do you manage your income and expenditure, and how does a country manage its income and expenditure is economics. It's a very, very simple economics. We have also learned that this word economics comes from two words, oikos and nomos. And when we put these two words together, it becomes economics. So this is what we have been studying, and this is what we have learned. But there are economists across the world who have tried their best to define economics, and they have tried to sort of capture the scope of this entire subject and try to give us the scope of the subject in few words. The effort to define economics started way back in 17th, 18th century. So the father of modern economics is Adam Smith. So Adam Smith tried to define economics, and he gave his definition. According to his definition, economics is all about creation of wealth. So that is why his definition is called the wealth definition of economics. So he told that countries, whoever has got ability, should go out, should trade, and accumulate as much as wealth possible, and convert everything into gold and save it with them. And that's the scope of economics. And economics facilitates this whole process, is what he told. Initially, it was liked by everybody, and people told it's a great definition and all that. But slowly, dissent started, and people started feeling that, is this the scope of economics, or is it larger than this? Because this definition fails to answer one question. I accumulate a lot of wealth. That's a great thing. After accumulation of the wealth, what do I do? Correct. Is that the end of everything? I have crores of rupees with me, but after that, what? So it lost its color. The definition lost its color, and the definition was rejected. So then came Professor Alfred Marshall, who is very, very popular, and his work is studied, or it is relevant even to this day. So he tried to define economics. He tried to capture the scope of economics in few words, in few sentences, and he tried to give it to us. His famous work is called Principles of Economics. So in Principles of Economics, he gave another definition to economics, and he told economics is all about welfare. It is not just about wealth, but it is welfare. So what did Alfred Marshall tell us? The subject economics focuses towards providing welfare to the people, providing welfare to the society. So that is the whole idea behind economics. So he told that what brings welfare into lives of people, he told that it is the goods and the services which has the ability to bring the welfare into the lives of people, he told. So initially this looked really nice, because somebody is talking something beyond wealth. So it is not just about creation of wealth. We need to go one step ahead, and this wealth should be utilized for the creation of welfare. So people felt happy. So everybody should live happily. Everybody should be satisfied. Those are the things that comes to our mind when we think about this word welfare. So from wealth, we move to welfare. But then later, people started asking questions. It is an extension of the wealth definition. That's all. You need wealth. So that is the beginning. And using this wealth, you try to come out with welfare, because what creates welfare, according to Alfred Marshall, is the goods and the services. So what is this again? This is again an extension of the wealth definition. And this is also not something which is trying to capture, or which has the ability to capture the scope of economics. And this definition very slowly lost its relevance and shine, and people rejected even this definition. Then came another economist, and his name is Lionel Robbins. This doesn't mean that these are the only people who have tried to define economics. There are a lot of others. We are taking some of the most important definitions, landmark definitions in the field of economics. So then came Lionel Robbins, and Lionel Robbins gave the next definition, and that is called the scarcity definition. So he told economics is the study of human behavior. Now, if you take only this part, this becomes the the Xerox copy of psychology. That psychology is a subject which studies the human behavior, Does it mean that economics also studies the human behavior? No, there is another part to this definition. And he says it is a study of the human behavior when he faces scarcity. So that is why this definition is called the scarcity definition of economics, which is very, very important. Now, we all know that we have scarcity of everything in our lives. Now, which are the common scarcities that we find around us? Now, the space in which we live, we start feeling that it should have been a little bigger than what it is. So there is scarcity of space. Now, you may get pocket money, somebody may get salary, somebody may earn profits. They start feeling that our income should have been a little higher than what it is. So there is scarcity of money. Now, the most common complaint that all of us have is, I don't have time. That's the most common complaint that all of us have. So when we tell that we don't have time, it means that there is scarcity of time. No, you can always talk about management of time and proactively doing things, remaining active, all those things. But still, people tell that the most common complaint is we don't have time. So there is scarcity of time, there is scarcity of space, there is scarcity of skilled people, there is scarcity of space. There isn't a single thing in the world which doesn't come with scarcity, correct? So we all face scarcity, but still we continue to manage things and we make sure that we live our lives to the fullest possible extent. So what does it mean? It means that the way in which we manage this entire scarcity and the way in which we make sure that we satisfy our needs and wants to the maximum possible extent, the study of that or the methods of achieving this is economics. So economics is a subject which helps us, teaches us, which enlightens us about two important concepts. One is scarcity, other is the unlimited needs and wants, and how do we satisfy these unlimited needs and wants with the help of these limited resources that we have. And the subject which facilitates this kind of a thing is economics. So this definition was accepted, liked by a lot of people. Now, Lionel Robbins continued the definition and he gave further inputs. He told that economics is more of a science which is positive in nature. Of course, this was not accepted by people. Now, there are two kinds of sciences. One is positive science, other is not negative science, the other is called the normative science. So positive science is something which tells us what is existing. Now, if you ask me, describe India's economic system, economic position, I'll tell you India today is the fifth or the sixth largest economy in the world. The value of Indian economy is somewhere around $2.6 trillion. We were, before Corona, we were expected to register around 6% growth rate, right? India is a country which has around 137 crore people as its population. And India is one of the fastest growing economies in the world. There are times where we have even beaten China and we have gone ahead of it. So what did I do? I just described India's economic position as it is to you, correct? But what is normative economics? Normative economics tells us what is ought to be. Now we know for a country like that of India, 137 crore population is a huge population, right? Although we call that, population is one of the strengths India has got, but 137 crores is a huge number. And what makes it even more difficult and dangerous is our population is growing at a rate of about 2% per annum, which is really, really alarming. So what happens is 2% is not a big number. Just imagine you going back to your house after a test or an exam and telling that I scored 2% marks. Nobody will appreciate it. But here, that same 2% becomes very big for the simple reason this 2% is calculated on 137 crores. So that comes to around 2.25 crores. So every year we are adding around 2.25 crores of people. So what does normative economics tell? Normative economics tells us what are the things that we are ought to do. So what should we do as an economy? What should we do is, if we have to really become stronger, bigger, smarter, and all those things, we need to control our population growth. So positive economics told us India's population is 137 crores. Positive economics told us India's population is growing at 2% per annum. But what is normative economics telling? It is telling, hold on, this rate is not great, right? It is going to create problems for us. So we need to make sure that we control. So positive economics tells us what is, But normative economics tells us what is ought to be. So that's the basic difference between positive economics and normative economics. Lionel Robbins told economics is positive in nature, but later we have concluded that economics is both positive as well as normative. It just doesn't tell us what is existing, but it also tells us what is it that we have to do. So this is about the definition that Lionel Robbins gave. He told that there is scarcity, so resources are limited, our wants are unlimited, and how do we make use of these scarce resources to satisfy all our unlimited wants is all about economics. And he told economics is positive, but we know now economics is normative as well. So this is the third definition. There is another definition which was given by Paul Samuelson. And Paul Samuelson's definition is called the growth and development definition. Here he focuses on the effectiveness and efficiency. So efficiency is all about reducing the inputs and increasing the output. So minimum input, maximum output. Because we know there is scarcity of resources. So how will we make sure that we use minimum of the resources that we have and we come out with the best possible output? So that is what the fourth definition, the growth and development definition given by Paul Samuelson focuses on. We all know that growth is a quantitative factor. We count in terms of numbers. So if you ask me how many universities are there in the country, for an example, I'm not very sure, I'm just giving a number. Say there are 600 universities in the country. How many universities were there way back in 1900? There were 3 universities or 4 universities that were there. So in the last 120 years, we have added more than 500, 600 universities. So it's great growth rate, correct? So this is growth. We are using numbers to understand growth. If you ask me how many universities of India are in the top 100 universities of the world, I may tell 1 or 2, not more than that. Correct. It keeps fluctuating as well. IISc Bangalore, IIT Mumbai, these are some of the institutions which make it there, but otherwise we don't have many of them. For a country having 600 universities, only 1 or 2 making it to the top 100 of the world talks about the qualitative aspect. So development is qualitative in nature. Growth is quantitative in nature. When something increases in terms of numbers, it is growth. When something improves in terms of quality, it is development. So Paul Samuelson says that economics is all about improving the growth and increasing the quality. So that's why it is called the growth and development definition. So these are some of the most commonly used definitions in economics. Anyway, so this is the introduction that we have for economics. Anyway, this is not a part of your syllabus. So this is for us to understand what is economics all about. So we understand that economics is a subject whose scope is huge. It is a social science, correct? And it is an art because it is in the hands of the people who use it. The way you want to utilize it, you can utilize it. It has got theories and logics and model and all that. But you and I are free to use these logics and theories and models the way we want to use it. So that is why it is an inexact science. It is an art. It is a social science. Then it is both positive and normative in nature. And it focuses on the scarce resources and it focuses on the unlimited wants that we have. And it also helps us to improve the efficiency and effectiveness. So these are some of the important things that this subject, economics, comprises of. So we will go ahead. We will discuss the concept or the topic of demand, like I told you in the beginning of the session. So if I ask you what is demand, you can define it in several ways. So let us go by the textbook definition, the simplest of the definition, which you might have even studied in your 12th standard. So the definition of demand goes like this. It is the quantity of goods or services which a consumer is ready to consume, very important, which a consumer is ready to consume at a given price, at a given time, at a given place, at a given income, and so many other factors. So that is demand for us. So demand is the quantity of a good or a service which a consumer. So let us take only the first part. So demand is the quantity of good or a service which a consumer. So who's a consumer? Consumer is a person who is consuming, using, utilizing the goods and services. So a consumer is willing to purchase or consume a given good or service, provided the following conditions that I'm going to tell now are favorable to him. Which are the different things that he considers before consuming a particular good or creating demand to a particular good? He will first check the price. Is it in my budget? That is what he'll see. That's the first. Second thing is my income matching the price? That becomes important. Third, he will consider the time. Say, for example, it is summer, it is warm, right? And temperature is above 36, 37 degrees centigrade. And there are times where it touches 40 degrees and comes down. So that is the weather that is existing. Now somebody comes with one of the finest sweaters, and he says that buy this sweater, and this sweater costs around 10,000 rupees. Maybe income supports. The sweater is worth 10,000 rupees. But is it for immediate consumption? Definitely not. In that 37, 38, 40 degrees centigrade, the person cannot wear it. So that is not his immediate need. So he may go, he may not go. So time becomes a factor. Place becomes a factor. There are certain places which are popular for something. There are certain places which are not popular for something. So we consider even the place in which we are consuming or purchasing the good or the service. We also consider fashion before purchasing something. I remember when I used to go to the college, there was something called cargo pants, which were very, very popular. It used to come with some 6 or 8 pockets. That is completely out of fashion today. When I used to go to the college, wearing a tone jeans or a tone shirt was considered to be down market, correct? That was a sign of poverty maybe. But today, we go pay money and buy tone jeans. So things have changed in the last 10, 12, 15 years. So what do we understand with this? We understand that fashion and trend also matters. That also will promote us to create demand or not to create demand. Correct? So this is how things are. So demand is a factor which is dependent on price, income, fashion, trend, income, place. There are a lot of things that are to be considered for us to call that there is demand that exists for a particular good or a service. That is what is told in this demand definition for us. So the definition of demand says that it is the quantity of a good or a service which a consumer is ready to consume at a given price, time, income, fashion, trend, etc. So that is demand for us. So how do we represent this? We represent it with the help of an equation which looks like this. D, that is capital D, is equal to f of f, then the flower bracket opens. D is equal to f of flower bracket p comma y comma I comma etc. So that is the demand function, which is very important for us to know. It means that demand is a factor which is dependent on price, income, time, place, fashion, trend, all these things. So that is how the demand function appears for us. So what do we do for our convenience? We consider only one factor, and that factor is the price factor. So for us, demand is a function of price. Remember this, very, very important. Demand is a function of price. D is equal to f of p. The extension of this is the law of demand. The law of demand says when everything is kept constant, right? When everything is kept constant, it means that we are keeping income constant, place constant, time constant, fashion and trend constant. We are not considering any of these things. We are considering only one factor. And which factor is that? That's the price factor. When we keep everything constant and consider only the price and nothing else, right? In that condition, it is called ceteris paribus. When price increases, demand decreases. When price decreases, demand increases. Simple. So there is a negative relationship between the price and the demand. When one factor increases, other factor decreases. So that is how exactly the law of demand is defined. When price increases, demand decreases. When price decreases, demand increases, provided, this condition is very important, provided we are keeping all of the factors such as income, time, place, trend, fashion, everything as constant. So when we do that, the law of demand works. So how do we put it in the textual form? We put it like this: ceteris paribus, when everything is kept constant, when price increases, demand decreases. When price decreases, demand increases. So this is how we define the law of demand, which is very, very important. And it is, of course, a part of your paper 3 CSEET as well. The first topic that we study in paper 3 is demand, and we start with the law of demand. Now, can we represent this in the form of a graph? Yes, we can do it. We just have to consider two axes, the x-axis and the y-axis, which all of us have done in the school. And we get a line which is negatively sloping. That is, if you have x-axis and the y-axis, there is the two lines, and this line slopes from left-hand top to right-hand bottom. That's all. So it's a negatively sloping curve, and that represents the law of demand for us graphically. Okay, so what are the things that we have discussed now? We started with the definition of economics. So we saw the four important definitions: the wealth definition given by Adam Smith, the welfare definition given by Professor Alfred Marshall. Then we discussed the scarcity definition, which was given by Lionel Robbins, and the growth and development definition given by Paul Samuelson. So these are the four definitions which we discussed. And from there, we came to the definition of demand. And now we have discussed the law of demand, which is very, very important for us. Right. So what are the other things that we should know when we are talking about the law of demand? Now, in the law of demand, there is one point which we have to remember really well. And that point is, which is the independent factor and which is the dependent factor. That is very, very important for us to know. See, always remember, demand is a dependent factor. Never ever forget this. Very important. Can be a question as well. Demand is a dependent factor, whereas price is an independent factor. So price is not controlled by anybody, but more or less demand is controlled by the price. Correct? So this is to be remembered by all of you. Next thing that comes is which are the different factors which determines the demand. So there are various things that determines the demand. We shall take a few of them and try to discuss it. The first factor is, of course, price. There is absolutely no doubt about it. The first factor which decides the demand for a particular good is price. So everything or anything that is related to demand most of the time revolves around the price. But it is not to be the case in certain cases. There are other factors also. Of course, the next factor would be income. Income plays an important role. So with the help of income, we come to know whether we can go for a particular good or we cannot go for it. So that is, income also plays an important role. Then time we have already discussed. Then comes the related goods. This is a concept which is very important. Now, what are related goods? Now, any good that you take will have related goods. So a good has relation with other goods or might have a relation with other goods in two ways. The first way is called the substitute goods. And the second type of relation is the complementary goods. Remember this, important. So what are substitutes? Substitute goods are those goods which can be used in the place of another good. The most common abused example for substitute goods is coffee and tea. See, for example, if you take teachers, I don't know how many teachers would agree with me, but there's a common thing that I have observed at least. We conduct classes, we deliver lectures and all those things, and we start feeling very thirsty, and we start feeling that we need something which is little warm. So most of the teachers have the habit of consuming a lot of coffee and tea. Any hot beverage is something which all of us prefer to keep our throat and vocal cords really active. So this is what we do. I don't know. I have seen teachers doing this. In my case, it is 100% sure. So I need something which is warm, correct? Coffee or a tea, but I'm not very particular. Say I go to the college cafeteria and I ask either for a coffee or tea, and he says coffee is there, I'm okay with coffee. Or the cafeteria fellow says there is no coffee and there is tea, I'm okay with that also. So what happened now? I need a hot beverage, and it can either be a coffee or a tea. I'm not very particular about it. So what does it mean? Coffee and tea are substitutes for each other. Similarly, if you take The other example that I can quote here is, say, an IPL match or watching a movie in the theater. I'm just giving an example. That is how things have changed. During the IPL season, most of the movies are not released these days for the simple reason that people don't leave IPL and go. But there are a few movies which are still released. So what does it show? It shows that IPL has been considered as a substitute for this. So either this or that. So people can either watch IPL or go for a movie. Both of them get qualified under the entertainment segment. You can take another example of Pepsi and Coke. This is also a very, very common example that all of us see. Pepsi or Coke. Either Pepsi will do or Coke can do. So one of the products which can satisfy a particular need becomes the substitute for us. Then what are complementary goods? Complementary goods are where two goods are to be consumed together in order to satisfy a particular need. Say, for example, this is a very common statement that we used to hear 10, 15 years back. People used to tell this: buying a car is not difficult, right? But maintenance is difficult because the mileage of the car is on the lower side and the service and all other things are on the higher side and all that. So spending is more. Buying a car anybody can do, but maintenance is difficult. So what is the major thing that we focus on? Mileage. So what does mileage depend on? It depends on the efficiency of the engine. Along with that, it also depends on the fuel, correct? So the fuel and the vehicle are complementary to each other. Fuel is of no use if you do not have a vehicle. Vehicle is of no use if you do not have fuel in it. So they are complementary goods. A fountain pen, an ink pen, and ink in that. A pen without ink is of no use. Just the ink and without pen is of no use. So something like this. Say, you can also talk about bread and butter, bread and jam. So all these they complement each other, and they'll be able to add higher value to the consumer as well. So they are called complementary goods. So if there are a lot of substitutes available, it will have an impact on demand. If the availability of the complementary goods become difficult, it will also have an impact on demand. So these are the related goods that I was talking about: substitutes and complementary goods. Availability or non-availability of the related goods will have a role to play in deciding the demand for a particular good or a service. So demand is determined by price, income, time, then also the related goods. So all of them have got a role to play in deciding the demand for us. I hope you have understood demand and the law of demand, and you have also understood the determinants of demand. So these are some of the basic things that we have in the demand topic in the CSEET paper 3. Right. So what I'll do is I would be wrapping the session. But before I wrap up the session, let me very quickly ask you all certain questions. I know you will not be in a position to answer, and I'll not be in a position to hear. That's absolutely fine. But I will ask and you can answer, and you can sort of self-evaluate yourselves. So let us start with the first question. Who is the father of modern economics? Okay, if you have given the answer as Adam Smith, you are right. Adam Smith is the father of modern economics. Which is the book written by Professor Alfred Marshall? The name of the book written by Professor Alfred Marshall is Principles of Economics. Very good. What is the name of the definition given by Lionel Robbins? It is, yeah, Scarcity Definition. That's the name of the definition that he gave. Very good. Who gave the growth and development definition of economics? And the answer is, if you have told Paul Samuelson, you are right. Okay, so these are some of the basic questions that I had. Right, next, coming to the next part. In the demand equation, where D is equal to F of P, if you remember the equation, D is equal to function of price, which is the dependent function. So the dependent function is the demand function. Good. So which is the independent function? Independent function is the price. Very good. So demand and price. Demand is a dependent factor. Price is an independent factor. Good. So the next question is, what is the meaning of ceteris paribus? The meaning of ceteris paribus is everything has to be kept constant, and that is the definition of that is the meaning of ceteris paribus. Good. So what is the relationship between price and demand? That's also very, very important. What is the relationship between price and demand? Price and demand are negatively related to each other, correct? So that's very important. So they are negatively proportional to each other, or it's called inversely proportional to each other. Why is it called inversely proportional to each other? Because when price increases, demand decreases. When price decreases, demand increases. So that's the reason we call it as inversely proportional. What is the slope of the demand curve? The slope of the demand curve is always negative. So the demand curve or demand curve has the negative sloping, which is very important. You should remember, because it slopes from left hand top to right hand bottom. So that's the reason we tell that the demand curve is negatively sloping. Good. So the next thing that we discussed is the determinants of demand. So can you quickly list in your minds the determinants of demand? The determinants of demand are price, income, place, fashion, trend. All these things are determinants of demand. Under the related goods category, which are the two types of goods that we have? If you have told substitutes and complementary goods, your answer is right. Very good. So what are substitute goods? If you can give the definition. The definition of substitute goods is goods which can be used in the place of an other good. It is the substitute good. The simplest of the examples is coffee and tea. Good. Now, what are complementary goods? How do you define it? Goods which are to be consumed together. When the goods are to be consumed together, it becomes complementary goods. Simplest of the definition or the example is vehicle and the fuel. If you remember this example, answering this question becomes very easy. So these are the things that are there for us under demand. I've covered almost all the topics that are there for us in this particular part of our syllabus. And with this approach, you can start preparing yourself for the upcoming CSEET exams. Shall we stop the session here? I wish you all the very best for your preparation as well as for your exam. Thank you once again.